The 1960s was a decade that was filled with things that are unique to that time. From the fads in fashion and pop culture to the toys and habits of young people, the 60s was all about change. Things were shifting away from a more conservative time and entering into an experimental and free-spirited approach to life. So let's revisit some of the crazy things many of us were guilty of taking part in during the 1960s. From the very start, the 1960s was all about looking toward the future. The space race was in full swing, and everything started to look more futuristic. The furniture took the shape of rockets, pods, and capsules, while clothing began to resemble plastic suits and matching headgear. This was a time period when every kid was drinking Tang, while watching shows like The Jetsons and becoming fascinated by the new worlds created by Star Trek and Lost in Space. In the 60s, there was Beatlemania, Batmania, and then there was Bondmania. The 007 explosion was so big that it inspired a spy craze on the big screen and the small. We got to see Dean Martin in a series of Matt Helm movies, James Coburn in Our Man Flint, plus TV shows like Get Smart, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and The Wild Wild West. People couldn't get enough of the spy gadgets, beautiful girls, and cool cars that these secret globetrotting agents had access to. So it's really no surprise the genre became such a huge part of the 1960s, especially considering the backdrop of the Cold War, with international espionage and government secrets becoming the norm. Honor your past by securing your future. Recollection Road believes it's important to invest in gold and silver, especially now. Visit rrforgold.com to find out why Goldco is a top-rated precious metals company that offers a free wealth protection kit explaining how you can safeguard your savings and protect your retirement. Visit rrforgold.com to learn more about the benefits of including gold in your investment portfolio. The Beatles came to America in 1964 to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, and a record 73 million people tuned into the performance. From there, Beatlemania had officially begun. Their hairstyle, dubbed a mop top, became a popular look in the United States following their appearance on Ed Sullivan. The longish style with bangs was a dramatic departure from the very short, conservative cuts of the 1950s, and it was soon mimicked by teenagers everywhere. As a kid in the 1960s, you'd see ads for sea monkeys all the time in comic books, and you couldn't help but order the creatures. These were actually brine shrimp that were in a state of suspended animation, and they would come back to life when you added water, although they looked nothing like the sea monkeys pictured in the ads. But that didn't stop kids from spending the dollar to buy them, and the marketing ploy continued to charm kids throughout the 1960s. Before there were legitimate hair straighteners available to buy, there were actual irons that people used on clothing. So women in the 1960s who wanted to straighten their hair used the household appliance to make it happen. Laying over an ironing board while mom ironed your hair was a pretty common scene when you wanted to rid your hair of pesky waves. The danger of burning your hair or even your head was a risk that these girls were willing to take to get that long, straight look. Cars in the 1960s were a big deal, and it is evident by how many people took pictures posing on the hood of their car. Confident young men and women everywhere climbed on top of the car and would pose while someone else snapped a picture. Hoods were built differently back then and could easily support someone's weight, so it made getting that classic photo possible. Speaking of cars, there was another fad that had kids piling into small cars, like a Volkswagen Beetle, just to see how many people would fit inside. Car stuffing, as it was called, was even a world record-setting competition during this time, and to make it count, all windows and doors had to be able to close completely. For most, though, car stuffing just meant you and all of your friends piling into one car to cruise up and down the main strip on a Saturday night. In 1966, A rumor began to spread that became quite the urban legend. The Beatles were on top of the world, but there were rumors swirling that Paul McCartney had died in a car accident, and the band replaced him with a look-alike. The Paul is Dead conspiracy grew bigger after clues were found in various songs and album covers that alluded to his death. The White Album is famous for hearing the words "Paul is dead" when played backwards, and the Abbey Road cover was thought to show a funeral procession, but all of it was just coincidence. But were you convinced after playing the record backwards and hearing the words "Paul is dead"? If you wanted a real message from the dead in the 1960s, then you pulled out the trusty Ouija board to get answers. By lightly placing your hands on the plastic thingamajig and asking a question, you could watch as it gradually moved across the board to reveal an answer, supposedly. The 1960s were a particular high point for Ouija board use in terms of popularity, and the intrigue around supernatural beliefs continues to this day. Did you ever climb up into the back window and lay on the rear dash to take a little nap? It wasn't that uncommon to see little kids doing this in the 1960s. The cars were larger back then, and there was often a big area up against the rear window that was a perfect bunk for small children. Riding in a car was pretty much a free-for-all, with kids roaming the front seat, back seat, and pretty much any nook they could find, all without the restraints of a seatbelt to keep them in place. Airing on ABC twice a week from 1966 to 1968 was a campy version of Batman, starring Adam West in the title role and Burt Ward as a young Robin. There was also an incredible array of memorable villains, including Cesar Romero as the Joker, Frank Gorshin as the Riddler, Julie Newmar as Catwoman, and Burgess Meredith as the Penguin. This show was a sensation right from the start, getting so big so fast that the audience burned out on it pretty quickly. The wham, pow, and boom comic book style effects had kids tuning into the show at the same bat time, same bat channel, but by the third season, it was just limping along. ABC ended up canceling the show after that. Tiki culture reached a peak in the 1960s. It was inspired by the romanticized image of Polynesian culture and featured tropical drinks, Hawaiian shirts, and decor that included bamboo, palm fronds, and tiki idols. There is no doubt that movies and music played a big part in making tiki culture a theme of the 1960s. Hawaii had just become a state. Elvis was singing and acting in Blue Hawaii, and even Disneyland opened the Enchanted Tiki Room. But by the late 1960s, the style fizzled, and just like that, it became just another restaurant theme. During the 60s, there were 18 variety shows airing on 3 networks. It's safe to say that television went variety show crazy for a while. Dean Martin, Danny Kaye, Danny Thomas, and Carol Burnett were a few of the names headlining their very own variety hour. They were often goofy and had bits of comedy, music, and dancing built right in, so viewers were tuning in often to catch their favorite celebrity and all of the surprise guests that would drop in. The primetime variety format fizzled by the 1970s, and late-night talk shows took their place, but they kept some elements of the variety show era. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, and make sure to sign up for the Recollection Road newsletter using the link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, consider watching the other videos in this series. While you're at it, hit subscribe and share Recollection Road with someone you know. As always, thank you so much for watching.